me if I'm mispronouncing it. I'm sure that I will at some point. But we light this in order to light these. And we begin, just like the 7 habits of highly effective people, you begin with the end in mind. So while we usually read from this side to that side, in Hebrew, you read from this side to this side. And so we begin with one small light, which technically shouldn't be lit for another, 12 hours. Well, 6. And we allow this light to be the light of God and to remind us of the light that shines even when we think it can't. So just take that truth in with you now as we light the first Hanukkah candle. And we let the servant light the candle and say the sacred prayer, which goes, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu bamitzvotav, vitzivanu lehadnik ner shel Hanukkah. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, Sha'asa nisim lavotainu bayamim ha'amhem bazman hazeh. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, shehemiyanu, v'kiyamanu, v'hihiyanu, lazman hazeh. Amen. Can't remember if I keep this one lit. Yes? Okay. See? We have some Jewish folks who have much to give us in terms of information. And so that is the first night of Hanukkah. I'll bet you didn't think that you'd get to evening quite this quickly today, did ya? There is a story that you can look up on Google that is the story of Hanukkah. To give you the very shortened version, there was a time about between 300 and 500 years after Jesus the Christ, where the Syrian Greeks had taken over Jerusalem. And they forced the Jews kind of underground. They forced them to eat pork. They forced them to pray to Zeus, even though that was entirely against their religion. And so, of course, like all people, they fought back to be who they really were. And there was a family called the Maccabees. Think of like SEAL Team 6 when you think of the Maccabees. These were their special forces, and they did the guerrilla warfare. And a very small group managed to throw the Syrian Greeks out of Jerusalem and take over their city again, their holy city. And the first thing they did, or one of the first things they did, was to rededicate the temple. Hanukkah means dedication. But because the temple had been defiled, they had to go through some ritual in order to make it a safe and holy space again. And so what they did was they found the menorah and they put it up, but they couldn't find, these were actually oil containers, and that's what burned. But it had to be a specific kind of oil, and it took 8 days to make. They could only find 1 day's worth of oil. And so they stepped out in faith and they lit the menorah. And they did their rituals. And the story is that the real miracle is that it lasted for 8 days, when it should have only lasted for 1. That's a very short version of the story. There's a lot to the dreidel game that they used to play as a means of teaching the children orally what their Torah said. And then if the soldiers came by, they were just playing a game. That's actually an urban myth, believe it or not. It came to the Jews from the Celts, so all of us Irish folk say you're welcome. And what I'd like you to remember is the most important part of this for me is that this is to go in the front window so that strangers walking by will see the light. There is a tradition within Orthodox Jewish homes that a mezuzah goes on the right side of the door, all the doors, if you want to get correct about it. Within the mezuzah is a scroll that has a Hebrew prayer on it. And that goes in and is kind of sealed in, and only certain people can write that certain scroll. And so what they would do in the early days is they would take this on the Hanukkah night and put it to the left outside the door, so that if you stood in your doorway, you were surrounded by holiness. Now, what we know is that if we stand in our doorway, it looks like we're welcoming somebody in, right? So if we can stand in our spiritual truth and welcome in the rest of the world, what would it look like out there? What would it look like in here? To me, that's the miracle of Hanukkah, is that ever welcome sense that I get when I am in spirit, when I am doing my spiritual work, and that I take with me out into the world now that I understand. Have I really been talking that long? Okay, so God likes to show off, apparently. And when I say that if we light the first candle, Spirit, I was going to say Spirit will light the rest of them. Dude. I'm a little scared. What we have been focusing on this year is our 4 primary values. This month we're talking about joy, and part of the joy is the laughter that comes when God winks at us. And I call that a God wink. Part of it is, for me, we saved joy for last because, hello, December, all the holidays. And joy is the outpicturing of when we are being true to spirit that lives within ourselves. When we are truly practicing love and inclusivity. When we truly practice those values and those principles that we absolutely know work. The end result is joy and a greater amount of light in the world. So you might have been at the Quad City Interfaith Council's evening of Thanksgiving, the celebration. I had a lot of people talk to me about how wonderful it was to be in a place where it didn't matter what you call God. People were coming together to be one, to be for something and against nothing. I want you to know that over 400 cans of food were collected, and $630 was collected to support suicide prevention. Now, it doesn't end there. That's a good start. But the reason we do Blue Christmas this Wednesday is to also prevent any sense of helplessness and hopelessness that can lead to suicide. That sense of being alone. If we can nip it in the bud where people just think they're alone and they haven't gone into the clinical depression or into the more dangerous behaviors and thoughts, then they never have to suffer that way. And so what we did there in Interfaith, we continue on Wednesday night. That sense of welcome that the menorah in the window provides, we experienced here on Thanksgiving. We had 71 people here on Thanksgiving. That's the biggest one we've ever had. I'm going to need a 3rd turkey next year. And so I want to just thank all the people who actually set up the turkeys, so all I had to do was put them in the oven. Somebody apparently announced that I would not be doing the cooking, and so maybe that's why everybody else showed up. The people who brought the hams, the people who brought an entire wall's worth of not just turkey, dessert. Yes, where 2 or more are gathered, there will be dessert. It's the 11th commandment that nobody talks about. We had this wonderful time. We had to set up extra tables out in the foyer. And before that, I want you to know that we got the whole place decorated for Christmas. And little Logan set up our menorah for us. Now, he pronounced that word about 5 different ways. And it almost got me to the point where I could not say menorah. But there was a great deal of laughter, and there was a great deal of joy, and there's a great deal of stuff on the tree and some special ornaments. That is what happens when we throw open the doors and stand in our spiritual truth and say, everybody's welcome. The thing I did not change on the flyers was bring your favorite dish, bring willing hands to help clean up, or just bring your appetite. Everybody was welcome. And it doesn't matter if we ever see those people in here on a Sunday again. They walked away feeling loved. They walked away being spiritually as well as physically fed. The very first line on the frontispiece of our textbook is from a poem. It says, "Peace be unto thee, stranger. Enter and be not afraid." This is the invitation into our home here. It is the invitation into your own heart so that you may meet the divine there, the divine that lives in you, the divine that is this light. Oh God, I thought it had grown again, which is okay. If you are feeling unwelcome in your world, I strongly suggest you find a way to extend welcome. If you are feeling isolated, find a way to reach out. First of all, it's a basic cognitive psychology thing. If you can find one action you can do, it will break you out of the paralysis of feeling helpless and hopeless. And it's also a tithe. When you time your time, treasure, and talent, which means you reach out and give the world what you have, because you are good no matter what it looks like, that also is a tithe, and Spirit will return that 100-fold with the feeling of success, with the feeling of being loved as well as loved. One of the things we're trying to start up here at the center is to have someone here specifically to welcome people as they come in on Monday and Tuesday between 10 and 2. And so if you're feeling a little unloved in your life and you have an hour or two to give during those hours, please come. Please sit out here and be willing to answer the phone with a cheerful voice. You can fake it. I did it for years. Oh, public defender's office. Mine was the only phone that had a direct line from the jail that was free. I had to fake being happy many, many times. And you know what? Eventually, it worked. Because I could reach back to them with my voice, saying they were good people, deserving of respect and deserving of dignity, no matter what had just happened in their lives. We can do that in a far easier setting by coming here. Answer the phone, greet walk-ins. Because Eileen is often in the middle of doing math. And so when she looks up, her face may not be welcoming. It may be, I just counted that 50 times, and I am never going to get through it. So let's support one another and support ourselves in tithing more love to the community. If you're free for that, there's an announcement in your bulletin, and you can call Tom Kimmerly for more information. There are so many great ways that we can live in this very welcoming world, bringing along the energy of love that lives within each and every one of us. And sometimes the miracle is cash. I was actually in great thanks for that particular gift. I've spent it about 50 times in my head. And then somebody tithed to me personally afterwards. And that was a whole nother level of, oh, okay, I get it. Just because we get a certain amount of love in whatever form it shows up in our lives doesn't mean we stop. It means we move on to more and share more. There's more gift available. Now, that is not because we're about to go and do our collection that I'm saying that. What I want you to know is that just because this year we had 71 people that we fed and broke bread with, doesn't mean that next year we shouldn't shoot for 100. Just because this week we're starting with 2 young explorers understanding world religions doesn't mean we can't open our doors and our hearts to 50. however many kids are back there, I don't know, I stopped counting, we can open our hearts and minds to more of them. This week, as we take up the collection for Paradise, we are extending our love and our welcome to people who have lost their spiritual physical home, as well as their personal physical homes. But what we're doing is telling the universe that this outreaching of love, we want to see more of that. Would you like to see peace break out all over the world this year? My mother used to say, what if they threw a war and nobody came? When we do these things to open our hearts and show welcome, what we're doing is creating the world that works for everyone. And that sounds like a great place to live. So let's go to prayer. Just because we're so full today doesn't mean I don't want these front seats full. That has become my yardstick. And so in this moment, that love, that joy, that God winks, saying that there is this good that we deserve no matter what life looks like, and there is more. This is the energy in which we now live. This is the energy I claim for each and every one of them, the mitzvah that we do in order to create a world that works for everyone is to be welcoming. To come from a place in ourselves where there is joy available, and it overflows and bubbles up into the world. We extend that hand of love to one another because it's all divine. And so in this energy of joy, we are recognizing the divine that lives within us and between us, as well as in each other. And so with an overflowing heart, I send out this love and this joy, and I recognize those potential heart friends that currently are strangers. Maybe that's the person you look in the mirror at during the day. What I know and claim is that the divine within you is the best friend you could ever have, that I could ever have, that we could ever have. And it is that loving being that is in form as each of us right now, no matter what we have accused it of in the past. And so I throw the doors wide open on my heart and celebrate that this is who and what we really are. This holy of holies that is the human heart is now open to all, is now the place where spirit lives. And that is the healing we have asked for, whether it's a physical healing, a financial healing, an emotional healing. It is that truth that is the grace of spirit itself. Resting in that, I just let it all be, and so it is. And at this time, I'll ask you to stand and sing with me as we let that love wash over us